Freedom means the supremacy of human rights everywhere. Our support goes to those who struggle to gain those rights or keep them. Our strength is our unity of purpose. To that high concept, there can be no end save victory. A very delightful morning to each one present here. It gives me immense pleasure to be hosting this meaningful session on the occasion of International Human Rights Day. This year's theme for Human Rights Day is equality, reducing inequalities, advancing human rights. To propel this session further ahead, I would like to call upon Mr. Rohit J. Matthew, sir, Assistant Professor, to welcome and introduce our esteemed chief guest, Mrs. Irfana Nazir.
A very warm welcome to our chief guest, Ms. Irfana Nazir, our principal, uh, Dr. J. M. Mallikarjunaya, my faculty colleagues and staff, and all of you gathered here. In the words of the 14th Dalai Lama, the current Dalai Lama, he had once stated that peace can only last where human rights are respected, where the people are fed, where individuals are free. So this concept of human rights obviously has come a long way from the time the UNDHR HDR was signed, right? And there are three generations of human rights has been concepted by Dr. Karen Vasak, right? And so today we could not have had a better person than Mrs. Irfana Nazir to tell us the importance of this concept called human rights. Mrs. Irfana Nazir has kindly consented to grace us on this occasion, and a brief background of ma'am is in order. Ma'am had started her legal education at Bangalore University, and subsequently she worked as an associate in the firms of Sundar Swami Ramdas and Associates. Ma'am has also worked in Cyril Amarchand and Mangadas, and has also worked as a senior associate in the chambers of D.N. Nanjunda Reddy, senior advocate. Besides this, ma'am also has lengthy experience in the field of real estate and has also practiced in the lower courts, the Central Appellate Tribunal, the Karnataka State Appellate Tribunal, the labor courts, as well as the family courts. Ma'am is also currently arguing a lot of matters in the High Court which have been constitutionally challenged. Ma'am also has a lot of matters which have been reported and they have been accrued to ma'am's credit. Currently, ma'am is the managing partner at uh, Irfana Nazir and Associates. So we welcome a warm welcome to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. We feel honored to be enabled to hear a dynamic visionary. Quoting former UN Deputy Secretary General, there can be no peace without development, no development without peace, and no lasting peace or sustainable development without respect for human rights and rule of law. Thus, every individual should be accorded their basic human rights, irrespective of their caste, creed, religion, or gender. Now, to present the prefatory note, I would like to call upon our mentor, IQSC coordinator, Dr. Manoj Kumar V. Hiramat sir, to grace the stage.
Good morning to everyone. Respected principal sir and guest for the day, Ms. Irfana Nazir, and my dear students and colleagues. So on the occasion of International Human Rights Day, we are gathered here to participate in this intellectual discourse, which is going to be conducted by Ms. Irfana Nazir on the aspect of reasonableness under the Constitution of India in the context of human rights. My role is to just lay a ground for the topic for the discussion today. No doubt my colleague, Mr. Rohan, and my anchor already has a laid out background, but let me just put few words and take you to the next level. So from the inception of the society or inception of the institution called government, it has been an endeavor of the humankind to have a limited government. So keeping the power of the state under control is a continuing effort of mankind. Keeping the power totally uncontrolled definitely results into chaotic situation because the ruler becomes responsible. At the same time, keeping a keeping a lot of control on the state or the power of the state results in, or it becomes a hurdle in meeting the social expectations by the state. Hence, the balance has to be struck between exercise of power and the limitation of power. So, power would be limited or restricted. The power of the state would be limited or restricted either by prescribing a duty on the state or to the state, or by imposing some disabilities on the state. The first one is difficult. Prescribing the duties and asking the state to do it is difficult and difficult to enforce. But the second one is easier compared to the first one by virtue of the Constitution. So, Constitution prescribes certain limitations on the power of the state that makes state disabled to some extent. One such device that is discovered or invented or has been identified by the constitution makers invariably in all parts of the world is human rights or the fundamental rights. One such device, human right, which has been used by the states to limit the state power, definitely acts as a limitation of the power of the state. But at the same time, we should bear in mind that having the absolute right is also not permissible. That leads to another difficulty in the society. So now, how to balance? So absolute rights also cannot be given. Absolute power also cannot be conferred on the state. So there has to be some balance between these two. This conundrum of balancing the rights as well as the power has been effectively addressed by constitution makers of India by inserting something called reasonable restrictions in the fundamental rights part. So that reasonable restriction, how it has been interpreted and how it has been evolved over a period of time by the judiciary in India is something which we have to develop on. So this conundrum between the power and the rights within the constitutional framework is going to be addressed. With this, if it is not, I would like to thank the organizer for giving this.
Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us. John F. Kennedy once said, "The rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man is threatened." Thus, it is upon each one of us to take
with everybody's permission, okay. First of all, Mr. Matthew, I am not as celebrated as May 7th, but thank you so much. What we are here to speak about is a simple concept. It's something that requires common sense. But for common sense, we all know we need to apply our minds. We apply our minds if we are better educated, right? I am not here for a lecture. I am here for a conversation, right? Anybody has anything to say in the middle of this, please stop me. We can continue. Can you hear me? Is it better? If anybody has anything to say in the middle of all of this, please feel free. We can discuss this and we can go together, right? I cannot discuss anything beyond concepts today, because I believe the majority of the crowd today is first years. And most of you, how many of you have studied sociology? By a show of hands, sociology. Nobody. One person. Two. Not even in pre-university, 12th, anything. No. Okay. How many of you have studied history? Civil, what is it? Civics, history and civics. Social science, civics. Everybody? So I believe all of you are aware of what fundamental rights are. At least you know the language employed. Do you know the history behind it? No? You didn't read about the 1947, the wars and the British Raj and everything. What happened before that? Conversation, what happened before that? Before British Raj, way long ago. Huh? I can't tell you. Speak up. Monarchy. What happened before that? Monarchy came up because society was established. Right? How did a society come to be established among Neanderthals? Sense of security and see, this is where science students come in. Where are the science students? How many of you heard of Darwin's theory? Right? Remember this concept and remember that it applies even to today's conversation. Okay? What is Darwin's theory? That's his principle. What is his theory? Anybody who has graduated and is no longer a student is not allowed to speak. Go on. What is his theory? Loudly, everyone needs to hear you. You're a lawyer, Madam Duncan has to stand up and say it. Survival of the fittest has what to do with color?
It's about the nature, like the ones who get adapted to the nature are more survived than the ones who are highlighted for it. That's how it relates.
So that would be the theory of survival of the one who can adapt the best. What about survival of the fittest? How does that come to?
Because fittest in the sense the one who can, how do I explain? Like the one who can adapt with the surrounding. If you don't adapt with the surrounding, you can't fit in the society. Even it comes to the society also. The more you adapt to the society, the more you are surviving.
Better you survive.
The better you survive. That's how it is.
So apply it to society. How do you think society will form? How do you think monarchy came about?
The rulers. So more than monarchy, I would like to say that it's like the oppressed ones. When you even take it to the caste.
You're going to a different. You're jumping. Where's the sociology story? How did society evolve? Loudly. Need a mic? I can't hear you. How did society evolve?
From people
Go on.
that's fine.
Yeah, it's just a discussion. Go on.
It's when people, a group of people tend to have the same thinking and have the same philosophy. They all come together and form certain society.
Okay.
And in that society, the person who has the strongest mindset will become the leader.
So how do you apply survival of the fittest to that? She said the sentence.
It's like the smarter one in the group becomes the leader. So he's the fittest, fittest in the sense the smartest. So he is able to rule the people around him, and the people who are less smart or less confident than him.
I would correct that sentence to say that he will be able to secure consensus.
Yeah.
Not that he's the strongest, but that he's able to secure consensus. right? That is the philosophy on which society was established. Now, this is the basic that I thought you would be prepared, but we have majority of science students today, so it's okay. We will proceed. The origin of human rights, right? How do you think human rights as a concept evolved in this survival of the fittest? Anybody? For somebody to recognize that there was oppression, for somebody to recognize that there was somebody oppressing them, how does that concept evolve? Right?
So generally, when there is someone who is who wants to survive of this, generally there is someone who is in the top. It is generally considered that there is someone who is being oppressed. So to make their lives more noticed that they are being oppressed, we need something to protect them. So that's when the concept of human rights initially began.
Okay. She said something at the beginning of the session about John F. Kennedy. Does anybody remember what she said, or were we just staring blindly? You're an organizer, no? Go on, who was saying it? Can you explain this? Think. Your job henceforth is to think. Go on. This is a conflict. Everybody is writing one by one, right? This is called natural law in sociology, right? Natural law, we do read in science that it follows chemical compounds follow a particular pattern, the Fibonacci sequence, and so on and so forth, right? It all follows natural law. Natural law of human beings is that you cannot oppress beyond a point. You cannot bend to break. You break and it cannot be fixed. This is something that is understood in the Dark Ages history, right? Dark Ages and Middle Ages were oppression. Society was bent beyond break. Therefore, we had the Renaissance. During the Dark Ages, we had somebody called Aristotle. How many of you have heard of him? Everyone, right? Did you know that Aristotle supported the theory of feudalism and slavery? How many of you knew this? How many of you didn't know this? Right. He supported slavery. So the philosopher, one of the greatest thinkers of that era, probably the man of the origin of law, written law as such, has supported oppression. Right or wrong? Okay. Today's morality will say it's wrong. But there's a very, very long, there's about what 400, 500 years since then that have occurred. Right? After this, we had those in the 13th century, the Renaissance. What do you think is the first document that recognized human rights as a part of natural law? Go on, anyone. Anyone. Has everybody heard of Magna Carta? What is it?
Then the British Empire, the king has declared that certain rights are recognized which are not taken away by the king or because as the feudalism was in existence, then he declared that certain rights are protected of it. So then those lists was called as Magna Carta. And he declared that these are not taxed.
This is what history books have taught us. But what research and rethinking will teach you is that the Magna Carta had 63 clauses, in which only 4 clauses recognized some extent of human rights. The remaining 59 clauses were all used to govern the relationship between a king and his barons. How much revenue do they pay? To what extent can the king claim dominion over his barons? What extent of rights do the barons have over their serfdom? Right? The Magna Carta, as a protector of liberation and rights, is I would say it's a legal fiction. We only take what we want to read and we say, yes, Magna Carta was established in England. 4 clauses, of which only 2 are relevant. Clause number 38 and 39. And if you permit, I will read it out. That no man shall be put on trial based only on the unsupported word of a royal official. Which means what? Today we call it the principle of natural justice. That we shall produce evidence, we shall try it. Right? The next one was that no free man could be imprisoned or stripped of his rights or possessions without due process being applied. Please tell me you read this somewhere in the fundamental text. What does it sound like? Sorry? Right to property is not a fundamental right. Sorry? Rights to equality is right to freedom. Right to freedom. Arrested persons of 20 and October 21. Right? No person shall be deprived of liberty without due process of law. And Article 40 requires special mentioning at that point of time. It pretty much said that we shall not sell justice and we shall not put it on rent and we shall maintain justice for what justice is. Imagine if they had to write it down. Justice. Despite the Magna Carta, World War I happened. Why did that happen? Anybody? All of us, most of you have studied history school. Most of you have studied World War I. What happened? Come on. Anyone, I can see you discussing. Why don't you say it out loud? Come on. Go on. How many of you have history? How many of you history students? Hands up. I saw all that. How many of you did? Hands up. School, history, 10th standard. How many of you studied? None of you studied World War I, World War II. Then what happened in World War I? What happened in World War I? Last but one, red t-shirt. Last but one. You. Your hand went up. What happened in World War I? You nodded also when I said you read history. What happened? World War I. What happened? Who started the fight? This is not an exam, this is a conversation behind you. Who started World War I? Guys, come on, don't tell me that this, like, I know we all do Ratta and then we are like done with it, we Ratta and we pass it. But we need to remember basic facts, yeah. Who started World War I? We all love their cars. Huh? France started it. France instigated Germany to start it. So Germany started it. Let's put it that way. Okay, I'm not shouting it. Right? And who started World War II? How many of you said America? America? America started World War II. America Indian net? Go on. America Indian net?
I said America.
America ended. What ended World War I? There is one document which all of you have read about in history and civics. The Treaty of? Okay. And what did the Treaty of Athens do? Okay. It said appeal Germany. Okay. What is it? What else did it say? What else did the Treaty of Athens say? what is the consequences? Yeah, but when you write an order, you always say who would have read an order that okay, ABCD has done this particular mistake, therefore he shall be punished. What is the punishment? Add to that. Territories. They have to decolonize. And what happens because of decolonization? And the government fails, and then and then Adolf Hitler, the way we know him, was born. Right? Who started World War II? Hitler, no? Has anybody read about him? Apart from what he did during the war, has anybody read about his life before World War II? Huh? Very good. I did not expect that. What? What have you read about him? Huh? He joined a political party. Okay. So, for everybody who does not know, we could have avoided World War II if Hitler had simply been allowed to participate in the Academy of Arts and Sciences at Vienna. Sorry. He failed twice to become an art student. And an art student then failed to enlist in the army during World War I. He failed the physical exam. And we all know that I probably know it is a field that I probably be of this height, right? A man of that height and that stature who failed a physical exam commanded the largest and strongest army at that point of time. How? He did what no one else was willing to do. He used his oratory skills to explain to the common man in Germany that you are being deprived of your right to live. The right to live that was guaranteed to you by Aristotle himself. You are all descendants of the Aryan race. Therefore, you are superior. But today, you are being deprived by somebody who is not even half as capable. Right? Even today, that policy lives. Even today, that policy lives. The Nazi government cannot exist, but that policy. Why? Because he inspired a thought. Right? And then what ended World War II? Not exactly actually. Not UN was established a few months after Hitler died. But what? Hitler died because the war ended. So does anybody know what was the incident that led to suicide attempts by Hitler? We all watched Pearl Harbor. So what happened in Pearl Harbor? Japanese dropped a bomb where? Baba, stand up, give me your answer, and sit down.
The civilians of America were because they dropped this bomb on the ship of an American state. Civilians were trapped, not the army.
Okay.
So, American government got instigated and they came out. So that all caused the attack.
That caused the fall of Japan. What caused the fall of Berlin? Everybody knows where Berlin is. Stay here. Where is Berlin? Huh? There's 100 people here. I think you have 2 voices. Where is Berlin? And what do we like from Germany? We like their cars, but we don't want to talk about their history. Right? Go on. What ended the war at Berlin? See, we have a political dispute here. Stand up and tell everybody. Come on. Say, you need a mic? Turn around. Say your name.
My name is Anmol. Hitler basically tried to attack Russia and he left Germany unguarded on two fronts, because of which Germany was finally overthrown. And he even couldn't attack Russia because the main thing he forgot was it was winter. And he forgot to pack winter clothes, and so most of the soldiers were suffering from hypothermia. And he couldn't attack Russia, and at the same time he left Germany unguarded, and that's why he basically fled.
So what does this have to do with human rights? Anyone? I started with saying that Hitler inspired Germans to proceed with this war because their human rights being deprived. And then the entire world realized that human rights as a concept must be protected. Right? So in 1948, a declaration was passed. What was it called? 100 people and one voice. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I told you this will not be a lecture, this will be a conversation. And if only front benches are nodding and responding, then there's no point in continuing. There's no, I'm trying to learn with you. If I am wrong at any point in time, please contribute. Right? Right? Yes? Yes. Coincidentally, the drafting of this particular document started 5 days before Hitler committed suicide. Okay, they met in San Francisco. There were 53 governments that started with the drafting of this document. And the most important contribution to this that we will realize today was by an Indian. Right? None of us, do we all know who drafted the Constitution of India? Sorry, the Constitution has actually drafted it. We are in which was headed here. It's not a one-man job. Right? So now, do we know who drafted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? Sorry? Go on. The drafting committee of all 53 countries. Do we know how many women participated? No? The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, if I may, reads the first article. There are 3 parts, but we don't usually look at the other 3 parts. But let me read the first article. All men are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Does that sound right? What's right? What's wrong with it? Here the women noticed this, which is what an Indian woman noted during the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. One Mrs. Hansa Mehta from India, who was a freedom fighter, noticed this, and she said that this is against gender equality. This is a concept that we should and must ensure for future generations. And thanks to one woman speaking up in 1948, you and I, all the women here, are standing, right? We have Hansa Mehta going ahead and becoming a part of the which assembly? And do we know how many women participated in the Constituent Assembly? 12 or 13. How many total? How many members of the Constituent Assembly totally?
298.
200 and? Just a little off. 292 were elected, 93 were representatives from the presidency, and 4 belong to what are today called union territories. Okay. These 389 seats, out of which 15 only for women. Do you think that's proportionate today? Do you think it was proportionate then? So what was the purpose of having only 15 women there? See, all of this you need to understand if you're going to understand what is human rights. Because it is a human right, it is not gender-based. Right? It is not race-based, it is not religion-based. It does not go to your citizenship. So what is a human's right? We've all read some part of the fundamental rights and the principles to stay policy. What is a human's right under the Constitution? Anybody, anyone, please contribute. 21. Okay, then what else? Article 50? 15. Which is what? Okay. What else? What is a human's right?
This is right because these rights are given to you because you are born.
Okay. And see, today you will recognize this as 377, section 377 of the IPC. It is an extension of your human right. We will recognize this abolition of discrimination, the abolition of Sati system. All of this is a part of the human right. But under the Constitution, what do you call it? Fundamental rights, part 3. What of part 3 is yours, right? Part 3 starts from which article and ends where? Because it's a part of your civic service. Starts at 12 and ends at 5. What is 12? What is 13? Your citizenship is guaranteed under 13. It's identified and guaranteed under 13. It's only because 12 and 13 exist. So you have 14, 15, all the way to 35. Right? See, this is all logical flow. As you proceed in law, you will understand every act has a logical flow. Right? Has everybody heard of this one judgment called A.K. Gopalan? A.K. Gopalan was the state of Madras. You would have heard of it. No? Nobody's heard? Trust me, it's one of the most important cases. See, you will have the opportunity over the next 5 years to deal with Articles 14, 19, and 21. It's called the Golden Triangle. You will also have the opportunity to study cases on the Bharti case. How many of you read that for your SAT exams? Yes, so did I. You will have ample opportunity to deal with this. So we will do it today, something that we don't normally do in the course of law. Article 20. What is Article 20? Anybody knows? No? Okay, this is something that I haven't told you about. Article 20 is the protection that you are given. You are guaranteed against self-incrimination and double jeopardy. What is double jeopardy? Anyone other than the first question? Okay. Self-incrimination. You don't know. What is the word self-incrimination? This is the concept. What is self-incrimination? Think. What does the word mean when you hear self-incrimination in a common conversation? What do you understand? You don't understand anything. Sorry? Try. Participate. You might just learn something. I might learn something from you. Sorry? I got a little louder. Somebody give him a mic, please. When I was in college, and people speak loudly, they used to say, "Khana nahi khaya?"
Expose yourself.
Expose yourself. In what context? Give me an example. Anything, any simple stuff. No? No? Self-incrimination is when you are being accused of a crime, you will not, by any entity of law, be forced to say that I have made this mistake. I have committed this crime. Please punish me. We recognize this as a confession, right? But the legal validity of a confession is determined under this particular provision. Okay? So now try to understand what I'm trying to say to you and give me an answer, right? You are now being held in detention, right? You are under arrest for some offense that you committed under the IPC. Let's say you created, you caused a riot, therefore all of you are now you're in jail today, right? And suddenly today I come to serve an order on you from the central government saying that you are capable of creating future riots. All of you are capable of creating future riots, and you are capable of harming public safety, public policy, national security, you threaten all of us. Right? Your existence, your freedom, liberty to move around threatens us, threatens our existence. Therefore, you shall remain in detention until the central government says, right? What according to you is wrong in this scenario? Come on, all of you are under arrest right now. How many of you are going to say that this is wrong? By a show of hands, how many say that this is wrong? How many? How many say that me arresting you without telling you why you are under arrest is wrong? Okay. Now, out of all of the hands up, hands up. Out of all of these people who have their hands up, you don't think it's wrong for me to arrest you? It is deny your hands down. So if all of you are now under arrest, one of you volunteer before I take the person out and tell me why do you think it is wrong?
Well, because we must give valid reason why we are actually in this state. We just can't arrest us just like that.
It's not arrest.
Individual rights should be violated.
Says what?
Like, you need to give a valid reason.
Says what? Says what? I am the central government. You need to.
Right and wrong.
RBI in which year? 2005. Talking about 1950. 1950, when the Constitution of India came into force. Common sense. What do you think is wrong here? Huh? Human rights has been defined. There's a particular definition. There's a particular word. It's very close to it. See, I'm on Article 20. The next article says, 21 says, application of fine is all that.
Well, right to speak.
That is 19. That is 19. It shall not be deprived of personal liberty without causing law. Procedure established by law. Right? What else is wrong in this situation? What else is wrong in this situation?
He's already saying that they're capable of it. First of all, he's not saying why they're expecting the detention, and then he's saying that you're capable of doing this. That's it. So you can't go on. So that's the point.
So what is wrong with that?
Like he's assuming what is going to happen, and he's not allowing them to.
So what is wrong with that? I'm assuming he can assume 100 things. So what is wrong with that assumption? That's my right. So he can make an assumption. That's his right to make an assumption. What is wrong in
My
my
first is like Something about me that's already.
Are you being heard with this? Or are you just being heard with an order? Are you being heard?
Yeah, I mean, no, it's like,
You're already under arrest for certain acts you've done that incited riots against British rule. Okay, you're under arrest. 1 second. And come, you're in jail. We're all in jail today. Can I come and give you one notice today? Have you been heard? So when your teacher suspend you, do you not say that? Please hear me at least. At least. What? Heard. Does anybody here not say that? When your parents at home say that, no, no, you've made this mistake. So at least listen to my side of the story. Right? So what is wrong here?
The basic side of the person is being asked
What is your basic side?
to expect.
So what is that called? He said,
Yeah,
your self-defense. Now, what is the other extension of self-defense? That you will not be forced to incriminate yourself. Self-defense is when you're given an opportunity to defend yourself. Self-incrimination is an opportunity for you to not defend yourself, but instead to plead guilty. Right? How many of you have heard of instances like this where you are forced to defend in today's society? Think about it. Sorry? Breaking right, it's easier to plead guilty and pay a fine. That's, you are giving up your right because it's the easier route. Right. And there's no consequence after that. You have 10 drinking drives and nothing will happen to you. You pay the fine and you go to the department. Self-incrimination. It's been in the news very, very recently. It's been in the news during the COVID protocols. That's not incrimination. That's a reasonable restriction for public health, public safety. For what? For what grounds? Okay, so what is that? You're going to discuss it in the conversation.
Basically, there's this stand-up comedian called Munawar Faruqi. He was recently arrested for trying to defame the Indian gods and the son of a BJP MLA had wrongfully arrested him before he had even actually said anything. And so he was asked to plead guilty even without presenting his side of the story, which was actually an act of self-incrimination.
What? That's what? What joke did he have? That would be loud. Okay.
We have all the so-called
Yeah. What else? Yeah. Anyone? What else do we have? Has everybody heard of Kanna Manoj? What is that? That was forced. A temple house was demolished in attempt to force her to plead guilty to which matter. Which matter is it? He said yesterday it was in the news. Yes. The farmer bill, right? For her comments, she was asked to plead guilty on this. So what do we understand from self-incrimination? Let me explain A.K. Gopalan's case. You will have several opportunities to deal with other cases. A.K. Gopalan's case will only be mentioned for one sentence in 200-page judgment. But that 200-page judgment you need to understand. A.K. Gopalan was arrested in the year 1930. 1930 was called criminal. He was already in jail, right? Then he was released in 1940. 1942, he was again arrested. And again he escaped. And he was at large in 1945. And he was arrested. This time he was arrested under the British Raj itself, right? This is the year when Hitler committed suicide, and we had World War II ending, and we had a lot of political shift in the world. In 47, he was convicted of riots in India, causing riots under the IPC and put there. Right? He was in jail. In 1950, after the Constitution of India was enforced, once it passed, it was enforced. He served with a preventive detention order under the Preventive Detention Act. He was required to do two things. He was required to not present his case to anybody except one principal secretary of the central government, and he was required to not disclose the reasons for him being detained to anybody except for his legal advisor. So even if I'm filing an appeal before the principal secretary, I am not permitted to explain why I am here in detention. I am not allowed to tell them the reason for me being here in detention today. Right? How many of you understand the various things that are wrong with it? Show of hands. At least, please tell me that you comprehend that there's something wrong with it. Not just because I'm saying that there's something. Yes, no. आया कुछ समझ में आया नहीं समझ में आया no no you want me to say it again because I can't. So the detention order, preventive detention act said under one particular section that I am going to detain you today. Okay, I am serving an order of detention on you. The contents of this order you cannot tell anybody. You cannot tell your spouse. You cannot tell the court when you are asking for revocation of that order. You cannot appeal against that order saying that this order has a ABC and therefore it is wrong. Right? This was not permitted. So what did A.K. Gopalan do? What do you think A.K. Gopalan did? Now in 1950, Constitution applied. What do you think he did? Freedom of speech was one of his grounds, but what did he do? He decided to do what every freedom fighter does. He first approached the court. He was one of the few people to file a petition under Article 32, the first few people. And he said that this restriction being placed on me is unreasonable. And by virtue of this restriction, I am now being forced to give evidence against myself. If I cannot explain to the court why I am being detained, then I might as well say that yes, I am guilty, punish me. So these were his 2 days, and a 145-page judgment later, the Supreme Court decided, 6 judges sat, and the Supreme Court decided that it is not an unreasonable restriction. You are not prevented from disclosing. I mean, this particular order is not you. We permit you to go to court. We permit you to approach the court. You can go ahead and tell them what your problems are. And we will lift that particular restriction only. That you shall not disclose to the court. But you shall not disclose to the public. Right? They said that insofar as Article 20 is concerned, we give you your protection. You can raise your defense. But insofar as Article 19 is concerned, your rights are not violated. Several years later, I think 20 years later, this particular concept was reversed in the Maneka Gandhi case. But you must not forget the man behind this particular judgment. Right? Now, we learned today that Hitler was an art student. And then he went on to write one of the biggest wars, the biggest war in the history of mankind. So, what do we not know about Hitler? Anything. Anything other than the one sentence that Article 20 shall protect the right against self-incrimination. None of your textbooks will tell you what it was meant to do. This was the first case law to decide one small concept of human rights. It wasn't called human rights as a concept in India at that point of time, but it did decide something that today we fight for. Are we understanding what I'm saying? Everyone, or am I losing out on someone? Understood? Anybody falling asleep? No? All good? All yours? All yours? Understand it? Does anybody here know about Indian Coffee House? Indian Coffee House. Indian Coffee House. Nobody knows about Indian Coffee House. No? Nobody? Has anybody traveled to Bombay or Delhi? Delhi. Okay. Indian Coffee Board. Do we know about Indian Coffee Board? Yes? Anyone knows about Indian Coffee Board? At least I have heard that there's an Indian Coffee Board. Yes? No? All blank? No? 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 Okay. Of course, we have a rule and a party and a deciding body for everything in India, right? It is covered. After 72 years of litigation, everything is covered, right? Indian Coffee Board was established to regulate coffee producers, coffee estates, brands that the generic brands of True Coffee, Nescafe, and all of this, right? Standard for coffee plantations and laborers employed in these coffee plantations, management, minimum wages, etc., etc. Right? What can and cannot be used, what can and cannot be grown in a coffee estate, and so on. Coffee was one of the largest exports of India. The coffee board itself had several human rights discrepancies amongst themselves. Right? Laborers were not paid, they were making work double shifts without being given sufficient break. They were being made to live in subhuman conditions, not enough water, not enough clean water, no cooking space, no maternity leave, etc., etc. Right? The coffee board was first threatened by Mr. A.K. Gopalan to rectify their mistakes, but then they didn't do it. So he gathered these laborers, he gathered the employees, and started something called the Indian Coffee House. Even today, it's the best coffee you will get in Shimla. Alright? They take authentic coffee powder from the coffee estates in South India all the way to Shimla, make that decoction, you have South Indian coffee. Okay? This is in Shimla. Anywhere, if you ever have the opportunity of crossing between Vedant Soda and Indian Express, you will find the coffee board on one of the sides. It is in fact a junction and a bus stop. Right? This coffee house as such was established to generate revenue to sustain these laborers. It was run literally as per the constitution. Of the people, for the people, and by the people. Right? It's one of the highest, one of the institutions with highest regard to equality of income. Right? As on today, there are corporates in India who do not believe in equality of income. Why? Let's go back to Hansa Mehta. Gender equality. Right? There are women who get paid 50% of their salary when they are on maternity leave. by corporates. While the government makes it mandatory to pay how much? Complete salary. Right? What is it in the society? So what do we understand from A.K. Gopalan? I told you about this case. What do you understand? Who said? Who said? What did you say? Okay. And the future. And it's very important to speak to yourself, yes. Very important to stand up to yourself, yes. But you must not forget, every law has a purpose. You are the future of that purpose. Today, you are in first year. Today, if you learn to apply your mind, not just to read what is in the book, but to understand what history behind it. There was no reason for us to remember World War I, World War II, Aristotle, blah, blah, blah. But you need to remember this. It's a society is a process. Human rights law is a process. Today, what we have done is simply an introduction to one sentence on this. A single sentence. And it took me 1.5 hours starting to like explain this. Just a brief on this. Right? If you do not understand where you're coming from, you will not know where you're going. Any questions that anybody has? Anything you want to discuss? Yes. Please.
Actually, you were mentioning something about procedure establishment. Like I said, it is two different scenarios, two different laws, like detention and then copy replace.
Okay.
So finally, when it gets into fundamental rights that have been violated, we have this exception called procedure establishment. But you were also mentioning something called due process. Now, please let me know that whether we follow, like Indian Constitution follows due process of this clause in English one. And it is not actually in the Indian Constitution, except things like maybe stands this procedure.
Okay. There are two ways to answer this. Either you go on the practical side and I tell you what actually happens before, or we go on the academic side and I tell you what happens in text. If you read what happens in text, there is not much of a difference between due process and procedure established by law. Right? The only difference is the origin of the jurisprudence where it comes from. Procedure established by law is the limitation placed by the Indian Constitution on the state. Right? Due process is the generic term. Due process of law requires general principles. There's no law requiring that you shall do A, B, C, D while convicting someone. But something like arbitration act, due process. You serve the other side, I give them my case. We do not do anything without intimation to the other side. It's a principle of actual justice. The concept of providing sufficient notice, right? Sufficient notice, you will understand in that A.K. Gopalan case when I said that notice is given an order, you are not allowed to defend. Right? So procedure established by law would mean in the Indian context, two acts, two codes, civil procedure code and the criminal procedure code. They establish the process that any institution or government entity has to follow before finding you liable for any act, civil or criminal. Right? Whether it is regarding building demolitions or it is regarding murder, riots, anything, even drunk driving for that matter. Process has to be followed. Procedure established by law has to be followed. course, there are several ways in court where we bypass these processes. That's the practical reality. That is something that we will learn after 5 years. But do we follow it in letter or not? Do we follow it in spirit or not? Do we apply that to human rights today or not? Anybody with an answer? I'm trying to encourage conversation. Okay, let's look at this petition. Anybody? Do we follow procedure? Or human rights commission? Do we follow procedure? Yes or no? Yes? Do we follow procedure? Give me an example. Think. Anybody here wants to give me one human rights that you think you are entitled to today, right now? And what I could possibly do as an institution to prevent you from using it? Committing suicide. Okay, is that a human right? Are you violating your own rights, or are you violating the right of society as a human being? So, what is the process established to prevent you from doing? Is that a process? Is that a procedure? After punishment. It's how do you reach the point of punishment? Okay, let's discuss suicide as a human right. Is suicide a human right? The right to commit suicide. How many of you say no? No condition. Yes or no? How many of you say everyone will stand up? Whoever is there. 1, 2, 3. Who else? Here also I saw hands. The right to commit suicide. Is it a human right? Stand up, stand up, stand up. If anyone finds that these people are not here in attendance for a period of serious consecutively, please go hide them. Go find them. I think human right. It's not a human right. So everybody else thinks that it is a human right. No? So you will look at everybody else and then say. How many of you think it is a basic human right? The right to end your life when it becomes so unbearable that you don't want to continue. It is a human right. I'm not talking about euthanasia. I'm talking about committing suicide. I'm not talking about euthanasia. Sorry? Euthanasia. So, how many of you think killing yourself? Alright, let's take it a step back. How many of you are 18 and 17, 18, 19 years old? Anybody? How many of you have had this feeling that, oh, I just slit my wrist? Or I just take back poison? Heartbreak. Everybody likes heartbreak. It's easily available, right? Yeah, that's happened. Huh? I have a friend who attempted suicide 57 times. It was allegedly right. Even that is right. Driving. How many of you think that taking your life is the right decision? My life, I will do what I want to do. How many of you think this is the right decision? Nobody thinks it's a right. Please say.
Right to live is my right. Right to life is my right.
Right, take off your notes. I think professor. Children, please keep an eye on this professor also. Okay?
And it is the burden of the society, government, to accuse me for taking my life. And as you mentioned, a person who and he might be accused for not being
See, what is punished here, you need to understand one thing. What is punished under the IPC is not that you successfully managed to commit suicide. What is punished is that you failed. You're doing it, do it right, otherwise die. Right? Otherwise die at my hands. I will send you to jail. I will not send you for counseling session. I will send you to jail. You try to kill yourself. And would you really criminals? So you try to kill yourself again. Right? So what is the due process to be followed here? What is the procedure that we established here? That would be due process. What would be the procedure to be established? Something informal. What would be the procedure established by law? That would be part of the procedure. Okay, let's assume there is an imaginary friend who is trying to commit suicide today. Whatever is working there. Yeah, we go very well. Go on. So, because the second is going to get back to them. You will realize that this is violating her rights. Sorry? Get into one. Right. Tie up a suicidal person with another person, so she also becomes suicide. What is the procedure established by law? You can talk. Yeah. To get over one, you need to have another one. All that can be done. But what is the procedure established by law to deal with the suicide? Yes.
Actually, I'm not saying like that. I don't want to be a bad to say that rights. Really, as opposed to as a law, you need to question if those are not saying you should not die. Not go right. You need to have a question to state is that you have the right to live. You have the right. So if any law is concerned with that, you have to question that law. Either because it is a law, it is not only questioning the procedure establishment, questioning the law itself. That is not
Fair enough.
due process.
This would be procedure established by law. So challenging the right to die. Also establishing the right to die. Okay. What do you think is the law to prevent you from dying? Can anybody tell me what is the law that prevents you from dying today? That is your right. What is the law that says it makes it punishable? Anybody? What is the ordinary criminal law in India? Criminal law in India. First year students have all prepared for entrance exams at some point or the other, and none of you are answering. I expected this to more participation. That okay? Go on. Sorry? Go on. Yeah. You see. The right to remain silent is also a fundamental right. There is third year. IPC, which stands for and the Indian Penal Code says that you should not kill yourself. Why? So right to live is if you want to live. Right? If you want to live, you have certain requirements and the states are mentioned those requirements. you want to die, then the state should not have any problem. Why are they interfering? Other people. That affects the society in whole. What is the due procedure established? What do you think should be the due procedure established? Counseling would be process. What would you do to prevent it? We simply have today a provision saying that you cannot kill yourself. So what do you do to follow it up? What sanctions? What? What sanctions would you impose on somebody who wants to kill himself? See, these are those philosophical questions that we do not have an answer for, right? This is an opinionated discussion. Someone would agree, someone would not agree. Many of us would have attempted but don't want to talk about it, right? I'm sure at some point in time you've all thought, I wish it just ends today. I am done. What would you want somebody to do at that point of time? Talk about it and say what? Communicate and say what? That would be what? That would be counseling. That would also be you are protected against infection by right self so protection against self-incrimination. This particular provision, Article 20, permits you walk up to a police officer or an inspector and say that I want to kill myself today. And he has every obligation to first take you to a counselor. There is no procedure established to punish somebody who has tried to kill himself, except for the CRPC, which very clearly says that you can only punish somebody after the crime is up. Then what do you do? You're in a conundrum. You cannot punish them before the crime happens, but they're clearly expressed. So what are you going to do now? Help them how? Help them by finishing your law, becoming lawyers, someday legislators, and fixing the problem. Right? There's a lot of problems, sir. The rest of your life. Or do you have any other interest? Law will, at the end of the day, not be just a profession for us. This is going to be a way of life. You can ask your lecturers, you can ask your friends during your internships, anything. Everybody will tell you that once you step into this, you cannot stop using it. Right? That would be amazing. Can you hear me without this? Could you hear me earlier? Yes. Another thing you have to develop is lung capacity. Anybody else? Any ideas on suicide? Any ideas on human rights? Anything else that you want to discuss today? We have 5 minutes, I believe.
There is a conflict in law if there was no India's repeat attempts.
Okay.
IPC suggests presently there is the Mental Health Protection Act which suggests counseling. Even the Supreme Court has taken a very nuanced view as to these are people who need mental care and protection rather than
That would be a procedure that is established at trying to prevent, right? Mental Health Act. How many of you have heard of the Mental Health Act? How many of you have heard of Protection of Human Rights Act? Protection of Human Rights. Hands up. 1, 2, 3. And 4. Okay. And the rest of us just did textbook. We're done.